Good evening. My name is Josiah Walcott. I am the younger brother to the groom, and I'm the best man. For those of you who were a little bit confused earlier, since our dad was officiating the ceremony, we thought it'd be easier if he didn't ask a question like, do you approve of this marriage, and then turn around and answer it himself. So I was already up there, so they said you might as well just read it, so that's why I did it. Now, according to a WikiHow article I read on how to give a best man speech, you're supposed to start off by complimenting the bride's parents. So, Mr. Van Os, you had an awesome suit on today. And Mrs. Van Os, you give extremely informative Facebook postings. I have learned a lot about Caleb's life from those posts. So when Caleb told me that I was going to be his best man, I was actually really confused because I was like this tall. You'll see some pictures of that later. It'll be really cute, I'm sure. But one day, I don't remember what we were doing. We were probably playing a game that we had made up because that's what we did our whole childhood. And he turned and looked at me and he said, if I'm not your best man someday, I'm going to beat you up. I had no idea what he was talking about. I didn't know what it was, but I didn't want to tell him that. So I looked at him very defiantly and said, well, then I get to be yours too. And he said, okay. So I was like, fine, that's settled. A few years later, I found out what that was. I was like, okay, that makes sense. A few years after that, I realized that I had to give a toast. So from then on, whenever I would go to a wedding, I would really pay attention to the best man toast. And I realized that it usually fell under one of a few different categories. There is the best man toast that is full of inside jokes, where I would start out by saying, I'm going to go ahead and keep this short. Or I would say something like, there was Caleb and I in our wolf pack, and we added our sisters, and then Caleb met Malia, and I thought, could it be? And now I know for sure that we had just added one more wolf to our wolf pack. Now the problem with that type of toast is some of you found that funny, which I appreciate. But many of you are just staring at me with very blank looks on your faces, so I'm not going to do that type of best man toast. Another type was the very narcissistic best man toast that is all about the best man. So I would say something along the lines of, I came here all the way from Spain because that's where I live and work, no big deal. Or I would say, if you were observant, you will notice I do not have a ring on this finger. I am very single. That actually sounded kind of pathetic. I'm not like this. So ladies, if for some reason you're impressed with what you see, you may find me on the dance floor later. I'm actually horrible at dancing, so if you want to remain impressed, don't find me dancing. Anywhere else, that's just fine. There's the type of best man speech that is very sentimental and draws a lot of awes. Like, I could tell you about how when I was little, what I wanted to most be like was my big brother. Aww. Just like that. Being only a year and a half apart, like we were very close, and when I was little, I would just tag along and follow him around everywhere. I would follow him, I would hang out with his friends, even when I wasn't invited, and I was usually very accepted there. I appreciate that. Being only a year behind him in school, I oftentimes had the same teacher that he had had the year before, so I spent much of my childhood trying to live up to these massive expectations that following in the steps of Caleb Walcott left. And a lot of times I didn't feel like I could measure up, and that helped to push me to become a better student, to become a better person. I would tell you, anytime there's a pause, you can just, I can tell you about how growing up in a family that moves around a lot, that can be extremely difficult. But knowing that no matter where I moved, my best friend was moving there with me, made things way easier. I can tell you about how when I was young, one of the only things I wanted to do was make my big brother proud, and how that's still true today. But that is way too sentimental, and that's overly complimentary to Caleb, and I would never say that to his face, so I am not going to do that type of best man speech. Then the one that is much more up my alley, there's the type of best man speech where I tell inappropriate stories about ex-girlfriends. So I can tell you about, I'm not even going to touch that one. But if you want to hear stories later, you can come and find me. That's just fine. So in order to avoid what is undoubtedly the worst type of best man speech, which is the one that goes on and on and on and nobody's listening to anymore, the one that I've decided on is I am only going to talk to Malia, so you don't need to listen. This is okay. Malia, I've been praying for you for years. Obviously not by name because I didn't know you before, but I've been praying for the potential future spouse for my brother. I've been praying that you would be loving, that you would be caring, all that mushy stuff. I do have a request for you, a very personal one. Don't let him become fat and boring. Okay? Don't let him be the type of fat where if he sits on a couch, he breaks it. That may have happened 2 nights ago. Potentially. I've oftentimes had a joke with my extended family that Walcott men will only choose the absolute best women who are worthy of taking the name Walcott. And I mean, living so far away, it's been horrible on me not getting a chance to get to know you, only meeting a few days ago. So I've had to trust things that he has said, I've had to trust things that my sisters have said, and my parents. And if even close to what they say is true, I am proud to have him as my sister. Do you remember the very first request I made of you? I want nieces and nephews. I love them. So if you have to leave now you can listen. So, as a toast, I don't know how many of you have drinking glasses. I don't have anything. I'll raise my note cards. But to my brother, easily one of the best men I know. And to my new sister, I love you both. And now I will turn it over to my father, and I think you're Brian.
Let's pray together. Father, it is such a joy to be here tonight, to celebrate this wonderful event with family and friends, people who have known Caleb and Malia throughout their lives, who have prayed for them and encouraged them and taught them and supported them. Others who have come into their lives in different places along their path in high school and in college and in their work. But we're all here because we join in celebrating their love for each other. Thank you for this time that we can celebrate their love and the love that you have given them. And we ask that you will bless our time and that you will bless this food that we enjoy. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.